Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not going to do introductions today because this is more of I would say, a somewhat serious conversation I'm going to have here. So, first things first is on June 1st of 2018, Konami had released a tournament update, which Rule 3 is right here, consisting of a new end of match procedures. Now, I'll just leave this here, which I'll probably put it right there because I'm not entirely sure how my face cam is right now. But essentially, at the end of the 40 minutes, depending on whose turn it is, at the end of the 40 minutes, the, you play out the current phase, not the turn of the game. Once that phase is ended, the end game happens. Depends on it win, lose, or draw. Now, single elimination don't count for this, but most of us don't play single elimination. Now, I'm not here to rant about these procedures or anything like that, but I'm more concerned about the health hazard that this could have in the regionals, qualifiers, championships, and worlds and stuff like that. Now, locals, it could happen as well, but I'm more concerned about the well-being of people. Now, we live in a society that where tempers are flaring, people are getting into arguments, and sometimes things get gruesome. They either get into fights, they eventually do something so reckless to either endanger either a single person or a group, or to the point of possibly injuring them severely to leading to death. Now, you might ask why I am talking about this, and it's a simple fact that in today's modern world, people don't have patience anymore. They don't have patience for this type of thing. Now, if the end game procedure was for that turn, it might have softened the blow, but we have to realize something. We have scumbags in our community who are abusing this as we speak. Most of them will lengthen the games per turn or phase or whatnot to the legal amount of time that they can have and then make a move. Now, especially late game, like within less than 5 minutes, they'll just sit back, think about activating a card, and stop and think about it even more to the point that Konami has made it to where people who will stall games and everything like that legal for them. Now, Trickstars is a notorious burn deck right now. It is currently the second best deck in the game outside of Goki's. But the simple fact is this: anyone who's dedicated to these games and having to deal with these scumbags, their tempers will eventually flare to the point that they are going to flip a table and possibly proceed to ruin the environment for everyone. That is the safest outcome of this. Or it could lead to a much more severe scenario where they will eventually get into all-out fist fight and possibly a stabbing, or worse, possibly death to those individuals. Now, hopefully it never comes to that. But I feel like Konami has created this environment either without realizing what they've done or they just don't care. Now, a lot of people are going to say the latter, but I believe that in the former, that they didn't realize what they'd done because they're business. They see things and they see what they can do to shorten the time because Konami, time is money. So a business perspective of that. But once you get into the corporate ladder, you eventually lose sight of the littler people, the people who actually got you there, the people who want to actually play this game for fun and everything like that. And there's people out there who will, and those people who are competitive. Now, the biggest problem with this is that Konami has made a in-game procedure while we have some of the most worst decks to have the in-game procedure in. So, especially Trick Stars. It wouldn't surprise me within time if they do not change this or they do not take action in the next ban list to fix these. We're going to get in a scenario where there's going to be reports of fights because people have got sick and tired of these smug scumbags and waiting for them to make a turn or play, and they're just sitting there about 30 seconds thinking about doing something when it should be mostly a reaction. Now, there are some people who don't do this purposely. There are some people who actually they have to sit there a little bit and think about their plans because they might not think as fast as you do. They might not see things like you do. They might trying to formulate a plan, but they just don't see any way out. Now, we could argue that they could just end the game and be done with it, but some people they're not well adjusted to fast-paced games. Most people at locals will be like this because locals is about fun. Locals is about being with your friends and everything. Once you get to regionals and above, that's when it gets become more serious. And some people will try regionals at least to see if they're ready for that environment. And if they are, they'll continue going up. But with a modern day viewpoint of this, with the SJWs, the current political viewpoints and everything like that, the extremists on both sides, people who just get into arguments out of nowhere, hustlers, in the game and all that, trying to rule shark you and everything like that. It gets to the point where you either give up or the worst case scenario in terms of what could happen is that we have a bloodbath on our hands, and no one wants to see that, especially at a card game. I want to ask other players, not just Yu-Gi-Oh players, but Magic the Gathering, Vanguard, any other card game, people who know about their regionals and stuff like that. If you saw this in-game procedure, how would the community react? Now, I know a lot of people hate this, the procedures and all that, but I'm not going to hear the rant about it. I'm just trying to give out a viewpoint that Konami has probably created unintentionally a health hazard environment. They gave us a ruling for in-game procedures to allow scumbags, to allow grinders, to allow people who thrive in irritating other players with their decks that are designed to troll people, to pretty much burn them to death within a single turn if possible. And there are decks out there. There's Chainburn. Currently, Time Lords can do it, but they have to be a little bit fast-paced when it comes to that type of stuff. Otherwise, they will lose the advantage. But Trick Stars is the worst contender right now because of how their build is. Now, if we don't do something about this, people will get hurt. And it's not something we want to see as a community. And I urge Konami to either fix this, either go back to the original way the in-game procedures are, or set it up to where you have to finish that turn. I understand from their viewpoint that the reason they did this was to shorten the time at regionals, championships, and everything, because it's either 5 or 6 turn ruling that we used to have that turn 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 that would take forever, especially when it's one of those long, lengthy stall games. And I understand why Konami wanted to shorten that. But I believe that doing it by a phase instead of by a turn was a poor decision on Konami's part. Now, I don't know if it's Konami in Japan or the Konami in the US that made this official ruling to change the procedures. I personally don't know. I'd like to find out, but I believe that if something dire happens to anyone when it comes to these procedures, that someone's life is in danger or no longer living because of something like this, then I believe Konami is at fault for something like this. So I would blame the person as well, but ultimately Konami has allowed this to happen because of they didn't have foresight to see what could happen in the game state. Like I said, maybe I'm being overthinking this, but all in all, can we really risk people's lives to this? Anyone who's actually been to a regionals or anything beyond that, you know how stressful it can be, especially if you're, in the top 64, the top 32, the 8 or 16s, the 10s and stuff like that. You know how these turn out. And the question is, could someone really snap under these conditions, what Konami has set up, in terms of, is it possible that someone could be violent and strike the player that they're facing because they were either a trickstar player or there was just some smug scumbag or whatnot who abused the end phase procedures to the point to where they snap mentally and just flip the table and either beat them to the point where ambulance has to be there or possibly death. I mean, this can happen. With society today, I see no way around this besides changing the rules or changing the ban list to make these rules better. But I personally think that it should be an in turn procedures and not an at phase procedure. So I just want to get this out to everyone because I believe that this is important. Let me know what y'all think down below. This video, the comment section below will not be set on approval. I'll actually read what y'all say. But I will delete any posts that I feel like that are just not relevant to what's going on. So y'all have a nice evening. Good night.